is apropos. Well, returning to the ever-worsening humanitarian situation in Gaza, where dozens more people have been killed in airstrikes as European allies ramp up their criticism of Israel. It stepped up a renewed offensive to destroy Hamas, drawing international condemnation as aid begins to trickle in, following a blockade since early March that sparked severe food and medical shortages. Mediators have meanwhile presented another proposal for a 70-day ceasefire and hostage release deal to both Israel and Hamas. With the latest, here's Emerald Maxwell.
A child attempts to flee the fire as the school she was sheltering in goes up in flames. She was one of the lucky ones who managed to escape the inferno.
Where are your brothers and sisters?
But she still doesn't know if the rest of her family got away. The school-turned-shelter was hit around 1 a.m. by an Israeli airstrike. Rescuers tried to put out the flames and remove burnt bodies, like these of children. Others use whatever they can find to help those trapped inside escape. But dozens were killed. The following morning, survivors who'd been living in the school wonder where in the besieged Gaza Strip they should go now.
We sought shelter in this school. We stayed for a long time just to feel safe. But there is no security or safety, neither at schools nor hospitals, not anywhere.
The Israeli army said Hamas and Islamic Jihad were using the shelter as a command and control center without providing evidence. They also said numerous steps were taken to mitigate the risk of harming civilians, including the use of precise munitions, aerial surveillance and intelligence information. The Israeli ground and air offensive continues to intensify across Gaza, and Israeli forces now control more than 3/4 of the enclave.
A US-backed group slated by Israel to take over aid distribution in Gaza says it plans to launch its work imminently, despite opposition from the UN and most humanitarian groups, as well as the unexpected resignation of its executive director over the weekend. Well, for more on the controversy and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, we're joined by Scott Lucas from the Clinton Institute at University College Dublin. Scott, thanks so much for being with us this evening. Could we ask you firstly about this controversy relating to this humanitarian foundation? Where do you stand on that? Have you, do we still believe that this mission, it's going to be launched imminently? We're hearing that it could start from as early as today, but it's not quite clear how exactly it's all going to work.
Well, I think it's best to start from the facts. This is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that was supposedly established in February to deliver aid only weeks before Israel announced a complete cutoff of humanitarian assistance to Gazans, which has led to the current threat of starvation and death. We found out last week through documents that, in fact, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, this was in the New York Times, is an Israeli government initiative. It's not a non-governmental organization. It includes on its staff former Israeli officials. The planning for this had been discussed as early as late 2023, soon after the Hamas attack on Israel and Israel's response. So this initiative is part of the Israeli effort as it plans for a long-term occupation of Gaza, something we have also found out from documents. Now, as this began to be revealed, there was pressure internationally on this foundation in terms of how it operated. Other aid organizations, say like Mercy Corps, Care International, said, we're not going to cooperate with you. We only want to cooperate with an independent initiative. The United Nations, of course, which has been shut out by the Israelis and its facilities bombed, said it did not recognize this initiative. Because of this pressure, Jake Wood, the head of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, suddenly resigned. In addition to the fact that no one will work with it, there are the logistical issues, which is all this foundation is doing is setting up a set of distribution points, around 8 distribution points in parts of Gaza, and people have to go up to 20 kilometers to get to one of those distribution points. Now, if you're on the point of starvation already, if you're sick, if you're worried about your children who don't have shelter, how are you going to get to those points? So this is frankly not a viable initiative, even if it was independent, which it clearly is not.
And we'd heard, of course, Jake Wood, he was to be the face of the foundation. What do we know about who exactly is behind it and where support for it is coming from specifically?
As I say, the revelations of this came out, especially in the New York Times, who got sources, who got documents, and it's an Israeli government initiative. So what happens here is when they discuss in late 2023, all right, we're going to carry out the military operations. This is going to cause a lot of damage in Gaza. It is going to cause a lot of disruption. We're going to be under a lot of pressure internationally because of this. What do? We don't want the UN to operate independently. We don't want non-governmental organizations to operate independently, because after all, we've turned this into a war zone. We'll set up our own humanitarian operations. So the planning for this went through 2024 into 2025, and then it intersects with the proposal for 4 Israeli military zones, one on the border between Gaza and Israel, one on the border between Gaza and Egypt, and 2 across the center of Gaza. So the Palestinians will be packed into 3 areas between those military zones. How are you going to feed them? How are you going to shelter them? You use this initiative. So the 2 efforts come together in recent weeks, but quite clearly the effort is no longer has as its priority to keep people alive in Gaza. The priority of the effort is to support the Israeli security apparatus, which is why former Israeli security officials are part of the organization.
And we've just heard literally there in the last minute that this new aid system, it has officially begun its operations according to the foundation itself. Now, it's also, Scott, reportedly planning to collect biometric data from those who receive aid from it. How problematic would that be?
Well, if you're looking at this from a Gazan perspective, what you're talking about is an extensive record for the Israelis of every Gazan, the ability to track those Gazans through their biometric details. And if the Gazans don't provide, if you're a civilian and you don't provide the biometric details to the Israelis, you don't get any assistance. I'm going to be very, very honest with your viewers, because I already am. What this is equivalent to setting up the world's largest prison camp, a very concentrated prison camp, and giving people a bit of food and other supplies if they can reach these distribution points. It in no way resembles what a humanitarian aid effort should be, which is to enable people to lead a semblance of their lives, even in wartime conditions.
So what then is the alternative at this point? This foundation already beginning its work, as we say. What actually needs to be happening in Gaza right now?
Ceasefire, and let international organizations and the UN operate without fear of being bombed, without fear of being shot at, without fear of being harassed and intimidated. Stop the killing. Let the aid back in. Simple as that. It's not, rocket science to say what should be done. But of course, why isn't it going to be done? Because the Netanyahu government has pledged to destroy Hamas. And because it has not destroyed Hamas, in no way can it countenance stopping its military operations. And now, in no way can it countenance actually providing for decent humanitarian operations that allow Gazans to have some hope that they won't perish within days or within weeks.
And Scott, we've asked this question many times before. Who is there at this point that is in a position to actually apply some pressure on the Netanyahu government?
Well, I mean, the easy answer would be the Trump administration, and the easy follow-up to that isn't going to happen, because the Trump administration is going to give a blank check to the Israelis. We had an incident in the last hour. Hamas said, okay, we'll accept a U.S. proposal for a 60-day ceasefire. We'll release about half of the hostages who are still alive, about 10 living hostages, about the bodies of 10 others, in exchange for the release of Palestinian detainees. Okay, we'll do it. Benjamin Netanyahu hinted he would accept that. And then when he walked it back, what did the Americans do? They blamed Hamas. So there won't be any pressure from Hamas. The international community, apart from the United States, still doesn't have the leverage, despite some steps in Europe, to put pressure on the Israelis. You want to know the answer as to who can stop the Netanyahu government from doing this? Israelis. There are a lot of people in Israel that are not happy with this. They want their hostages home. They want the ones who are still alive back with their families. They want the bodies of the dead to get closure. So they want a halt to the military operations. But are there enough politicians? Are there enough officials that will support those who want a halt or at least a ceasefire to actually get Netanyahu to back away from this? Because remember, the day that Benjamin Netanyahu ceases fire is the day that he faces the possibility of early elections and the possibility of a trial on bribery charges.
And we've seen also today the UN, it's expressing alarm over a new law in Israel that is essentially going to allow for 12-year-olds to be given life sentences. The UN pointing out the human rights abuses and concerns it has in relation to that. What do you make of that? That would be particularly worrying for people in the West Bank.
Absolutely. Just as it is wrong for Hamas to use juveniles in its operations against Israelis or to abuse the rights of those under the age of 18. It is a violation of international law to threaten this type of detention. And yes, it is a doubling down on the measure that all Palestinians are threats. So it will reinforce not only what happens in Gaza, but the occupation of the West Bank, which is being extended, in which we've had hundreds of people killed in recent months. And it puts juveniles at risk of being killed by the Israeli military or spending an indefinite amount of period behind bars.
Okay, Scott, we'll leave it there for now. Thanks so much for being with us on the programme this evening, as ever. Scott Lucas from the Clinton Institute at University College Dublin. Thanks so much for your time. Well, that's it from us for now. Do stay with us, though, for more world news here on France 24.